What if everything we thought we knew about death was only the prologue to a much deeper story? Imagine for a moment your final breath leaving your body. The world as you knew it grows silent, but instead of vanishing into nothingness, you find yourself standing at the threshold of a vast and uncharted frontier. The question that has haunted humanity for centuries suddenly confronts you with an urgency you can't escape. What happens next? Welcome, traveler of the soul, to a journey into one of the most profound and mysterious maps of the afterlife ever recorded. Tonight on the Etheric Compass, we'll step into the hidden corridors between life and death, exploring a text that has fascinated seekers, mystics, and philosophers for centuries. The Tibetan Book of the Dead. But don't be misled. This isn't a dusty manual from a forgotten past. It is a guide, a lantern for the mind when the body has dissolved, a companion whispering directions at the most mysterious crossroad of all existence. The text, known as the Bardo Thodol, emerged from the teachings of an extraordinary figure who straddles the line between myth and history, Padmasambhava. He wasn't simply a monk or teacher. To the Tibetans, he was the precious master, a yogi of unimaginable depth who arrived in the 8th century to plant the seeds of Buddhism in their rugged land. Stories about him shimmer with the miraculous, a man who bent spirits to his will, who entered dimensions unseen and who dared to craft a manual not just for living but for dying. His vision was startling in its compassion. If life is fleeting, he reasoned, then death must not be abandoned to chaos or fear. Instead, it could become a final doorway to liberation. But imagine Tibet at that time, a land of powerful shamans, fiery rituals, and an ancient spiritual force known as Bön, deeply rooted in the mountains and valleys. Padmasambhava did not crush these traditions. Instead, he wove them into a new fabric. With tantric practices and esoteric mastery, he tamed their spirits and integrated them, creating a spiritual foundation that would last for centuries. From this tapestry arose the first great Tibetan monastery, a place where truths about mind, reality, and the wheel of rebirth, samsara, were passed on. And from this soil bloomed the teachings of the Bardo Thodol. At its heart lies a daring belief. Death is not the end. It is a transition, a threshold where the soul enters a series of states known as bardos. These states are not vague metaphors. They are detailed stages that unfold after the body's final breath, a kind of cosmic map for consciousness when freed from physical form. And within these stages lies a possibility so radical it overturns all fear. Liberation is still possible, even at the very moment of death. Padmasambhava recognized something few dare to confront. When the body falls away, the mind enters a unique openness. Stripped of the constant chatter and distraction of flesh, it comes face to face with truth. For the one prepared, this instant is a rare opportunity to awaken completely, to recognize the essence of reality itself. But for most, fear, confusion, and karmic illusions rise like storm clouds, blinding them to the light. To ease this passage, the Padmasambhava offered not a doctrine but a voice, a guide to be spoken by loved ones at the bedside or internalized by seekers during life, so the soul would not wander lost when its time came. And so, the Bardo Thodol unfolds like a sacred map. It reveals 3 great stages through which every soul journeys: the Chikai Bardo, the Chonyad Bardo, and the Sidpa Bardo. The first is the Chikai Bardo, the moment of death itself. Here, the body dissolves and consciousness encounters what is described as the clear light. Imagine a brilliance beyond any earthly sun, a light so pure, so infinite, that it contains no shadow of fear, no trace of duality. This is not a vision to be believed in. It is the naked essence of mind itself, unveiled. Some call it the higher self, others the cosmic mind. In this light lies the possibility of instant liberation, a nirvana where all karmic knots dissolve. But there is a catch. Only those who recognize this light as their own essence can merge with it. For the unprepared, the sheer vastness of the light feels overwhelming, even terrifying. The ego recoils, clinging to the familiar, and in that recoil, the soul misses its chance for freedom. It falls back into the river of illusion and drifts onward into the next stages of the Bardo. In this way, liberation at the very threshold of death is both the most astonishing possibility and the most difficult. If this chance slips away, the journey continues into the Chonyid Bardo, a dimension of visions. Here, the soul is plunged into a world where the boundaries of physical reality no longer exist. What appears are not external gods or demons, but vivid projections of the soul's own mind, desires, fears, suppressed truths, all magnified with terrifying clarity. Some appear in serene and luminous forms, radiant beings of compassion and light. Others burst forth as wrathful deities, monstrous and chaotic, reflections of anger and attachments that the soul never mastered in life. And yet the teaching insists, these are not enemies, they are mirrors. Each vision, whether radiant or terrifying, is the mind revealing itself to itself. To recognize this is to step closer to freedom. To mistake them as real, to cling or to flee is to remain bound. The visions of the Chonyid Bardo are unlike dreams, though they resemble them. They are more vivid, more piercing, more undeniable. Imagine every repressed thought, every unacknowledged desire, every shadow you pushed aside in life suddenly standing before you, not as vague feelings but as living forms. The Bardo Thodol describes these visions in two unfolding waves, the peaceful and the wrathful. First come the peaceful visions. Here radiant figures appear, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, luminous beings who emanate serenity and compassion. Their presence offers reassurance, a reminder of the higher qualities cultivated during life. If recognized, these visions can guide the soul into liberation, showing that the essence of mind is not chaos but peace, not fear but light. But the tragedy is that many souls, unfamiliar with such brilliance, feel overwhelmed. Instead of recognizing the visions as aspects of their own consciousness, they shrink back, doubting what they see, unable to believe such peace could belong to them. When this retreat occurs, the stage darkens. From the edges of awareness surge the wrathful visions. No longer serene, they erupt in monstrous forms. Deities with blazing eyes, roaring voices, terrifying shapes that embody rage, fear, and unrestrained desire. To the unprepared, this becomes a nightmare of divine proportions, as if the soul were hunted by gods of chaos. But the teaching insists, these are not demons lurking outside. They are the raw forces of the mind, the shadow aspects of self magnified in a realm where nothing is hidden. They terrify because they reveal the parts of ourselves we never dared to face. And here lies the paradox. Both the peaceful and the wrathful are illusions. They are masks worn by consciousness, temporary projections. The true challenge of the Chonyid Bardo is to realize this. To see that neither the radiant nor the monstrous has any independent reality. They are like waves rising and falling in the same ocean. If the soul remembers the teaching of emptiness, shunyata, it can let these visions pass, untouched. But to forget is to be swept into them, to cling to the beautiful, to flee from the terrifying, and thus to remain bound to the cycle of rebirth. Fear and attachment, these are the bars of the prison. Fear makes the soul recoil from its own mind. Attachment makes it grasp at illusions, unwilling to let go. Both block the recognition of the clear light that still shines beneath every vision. The text offers a radical reminder. The light is always there, constant like the sun behind shifting clouds. To recognize it is to awaken. To forget it is to wander deeper into the labyrinth. For many, this stage resembles a test, but not one imposed by an external judge. It is the soul testing itself. Can it see clearly? Can it resist the pull of its own illusions? The wrathful visions may roar, the peaceful ones may tempt, but the truth remains simple. All are empty forms, fleeting like reflections in water. Liberation comes not from fighting or clinging, but from seeing through them. If the soul can do this, if it can gaze into the heart of the visions and recognize their emptiness, then fear dissolves and freedom is attained. But for most, the grip of illusion proves too strong. The mind mistakes its projections for reality. And so the journey continues into the third stage, the Sidpa Bardo, the realm of rebirth. This final Bardo is the most decisive. Here, the momentum of karma, the accumulated energy of every thought, action, and intention, pulls the soul like a magnetic force. Imagine a river swelling with current, irresistible, sweeping the soul toward a new destiny. This is the stage where the desire to exist, to continue, becomes overwhelming. Fear of annihilation, clinging to identity, and the residue of unresolved attachments drive the consciousness toward a new body, a new life. Visions appear again, but now they are shaped by the pull of rebirth. The soul may witness scenes of couples uniting, symbolic images of conception, a cosmic metaphor for the creation of new life. Drawn by desire, aversion, or karmic tendencies, the soul is pulled toward one of these unions, guided not by conscious choice but by deep, instinctive forces. And here the teaching warns, unless the soul can maintain clarity, it will be swept blindly into rebirth, carrying with it all the unresolved burdens of the past. Yet even here, a final chance remains. If the soul can sustain detachment, if it can recognize these visions as illusions, as empty as the peaceful and wrathful forms before, then rebirth can be transcended. Liberation is possible even at the very brink of returning to life, but this requires extraordinary awareness. For most, the instinct to continue existing is too powerful, and the wheel of samsara turns once more. Consider what this means. Life and death are not opposites, but two sides of the same current. The choices we make in life, the fears we feed, the attachments we nurture, they do not vanish at death. They shape the landscapes of the bardos, guiding the visions we see, pulling us toward rebirth. The bardos are not punishment, they are mirrors. They reveal us to ourselves with a clarity life often hides. This is why preparation matters. Padmasambhava insisted that training during life is essential. Meditation, contemplation of death, the practice of letting go, these are not rituals for monks alone, but skills for every soul. For when the moment of death comes, the mind is laid bare, and only what has been cultivated will remain. Those who have practiced detachment may recognize the visions as projections. Those who have contemplated the nature of mind may see the clear light when it appears. But those who have lived blindly, lost in fear and desire, will face the same blindness magnified in the bardos. The Sidpa Bardo teaches a sobering truth. Rebirth is not random. It reflects the state of consciousness carried forward. A soul gripped by fear may find itself reborn into a life filled with fear. A soul driven by desire may enter a life where desire is insatiable. Each rebirth becomes a mirror of the unresolved energies of the past. And yet, each rebirth is also an opportunity. Life itself is a training ground, a place to face the shadows, to cultivate awareness, to prepare for the journey that will come to us all. Thus, the cycle continues. Dissolution, visions, rebirth. Not as meaningless repetition, but as a path where every step, every choice carries the possibility of awakening. The Sidpa Bardo, with its storm of karmic momentum and instinctive drive toward rebirth, is perhaps the most haunting of all the stages. Here, the soul is like a leaf caught in a whirlwind, carried by invisible currents it cannot fully control. Yet what steers these currents is not fate, nor some external hand, but the subtle imprints of every choice made in life. Karma in this sense is not punishment. It is the echo of our own actions, the residue of our own thoughts, returning to shape our destiny. Imagine consciousness as a field, every action carving a groove into its soil. Over time, those grooves deepen, forming channels. When the rains come, when death dissolves the body and the river of the bardos floods the mind, consciousness flows effortlessly into those channels. The grooves are our habits, our attachments, our fears, our loves. They determine where the river leads. In the Sidpa Bardo, this becomes vividly apparent. A soul overwhelmed by anger may feel irresistibly drawn toward a rebirth where anger dominates its existence. Another, consumed by desire, may be pulled toward a life where desire remains insatiable, and yet another, shaped by compassion, may find itself reborn into conditions where kindness can flourish. The teachings make it clear the next life is not random chance. It is resonance. It is reflection. This is why the Tibetan masters emphasized preparation while alive. Meditation on death, far from being a morbid obsession, is a training for clarity. To sit in silence, to watch the arising and dissolving of thoughts, to release attachment in small ways each day. These practices are rehearsals for the bardos. They sharpen the mind to recognize the clear light, to resist the pull of illusion, to remember in the most bewildering moments that all visions are temporary, empty, fleeting. But let us step back for a moment. What does this ancient teaching mean for us here in the midst of modern life? For most, death is a subject we avoid, tucked away in hushed tones, treated as if ignoring it will somehow delay its arrival. We prepare for everything else: careers, relationships, retirement, but rarely for death. And yet, according to the Bardo Thodol, it is the one passage every soul will face. To neglect it is to walk unprepared into the most profound journey of all. This teaching is not meant to fill us with dread. On the contrary, it is meant to liberate us from fear. If we understand that death is not an ending but a transition, if we see that the bardos are opportunities for awakening, then life itself takes on a new intensity. Every moment becomes training, every act of letting go, every breath of awareness, every choice to face fear instead of hiding from it becomes preparation for the clarity we will need when the body dissolves. There is a striking beauty in this perspective. Death is not an interruption of life, but its mirror. The same patterns we live by are the ones we carry into death. The same illusions that blind us now will blind us then, unless we learn to pierce them. The bardos are not separate from life. They are life, stripped bare, magnified, impossible to ignore. And this leads us to one of the most radical truths of the Bardo Thodol. Liberation is not reserved for monks in caves or mystics who renounce the world. Liberation is possible for anyone, even at the threshold of death, even in the midst of visions and fear. At every stage, from the first breath after death to the final pull of rebirth, there is always a doorway, always a chance to recognize the clear light, to awaken, to step off the wheel of samsara. But the text does not shy away from the difficulty of this. Recognition requires courage. It requires letting go of the self we cling to, the stories we tell about who we are, the attachments that feel like our very identity. When death strips everything away, what remains is the raw essence of mind. To see that essence clearly is liberation. To recoil is to be bound once more. In this way, the Bardo Thodol is more than a map of death. It is a mirror for life. It asks us, what attachments are you carrying? What fears are you hiding from? What illusions are you unwilling to release? For these will meet you again magnified when the body falls away. And here perhaps is the most humbling revelation. The bardos are not somewhere out there, waiting only after death. They are here now. Every night in dreams, we enter a realm where the mind creates vivid realities. Every moment of meditation, when thoughts arise and dissolve, we glimpse the play of emptiness and form. Every time we confront fear or face desire, we step into a small bardo. Life itself is a rehearsal for death, and death is simply the unveiling of what life has always been. So what then becomes of rebirth? If the soul is swept into another life, is that a failure? Not necessarily. The teachings do not condemn rebirth as punishment. Each new life is another chance, another classroom, another step along the spiral path of awakening. But the cycle is endless until we learn the lesson, and the lesson is always the same: to recognize the mind's true nature, to let go of illusion, to rest in the clear light that has always been shining. Perhaps this is why the masters spoke of death not as a tragedy but as an opening. A closing of one door, yes, but also the opening of another. The question is not whether we will walk through it, that is certain, but whether we will walk through it with fear or with clarity, clinging or with freedom. And so the Bardo Thodol whispers to us across centuries, prepare now. Do not wait until the final breath. Look within. Train the mind to see clearly, for death will not grant you qualities you have never cultivated. It will only magnify what you have already planted. Plant wisely. If the bardos are mirrors, then what they reflect back to us is not some alien realm, but our own choices, our own heart, our own unfinished business. That is the most unsettling and at the same time the most empowering truth of the Bardo Thodol. We are not helpless passengers on a cosmic conveyor belt. We are co-creators of our journey, both in life and in death. This realization transforms the way we live. It is easy to see the bardos as something distant, as events that will unfold only when our final breath has been taken. But the teachings insist otherwise. We are walking through bardos every day, every transition, between waking and dreaming, between joy and sorrow, between gain and loss, is a rehearsal for the great transition. Each time we let go of one state and step into another, we are practicing death on a smaller scale. Think of sleep. Each night, as consciousness loosens its grip on the physical body, we drift into dreams. Here too, the mind creates visions, sometimes peaceful, sometimes frightening. They rise from the same well of consciousness that generates the experiences of the bardos. The difference is that in sleep, we rarely realize we are dreaming. In death, the same forgetfulness can trap us in illusions. But if we train to be lucid in life, to awaken even in dreams, we increase the chances of awakening in death. And what about waking life itself? When fear overwhelms us, when anger takes hold, when desire blinds us, are these not bardos of the mind, moments where clarity is tested? Each time we choose awareness instead of reactivity, compassion instead of attachment, we are shaping the grooves of consciousness. We are training the mind for the ultimate moment. This is where the teaching becomes urgent for us here and now. The question is not only, what happens when we die? The question is also, how will I live so that when death comes, I recognize the light instead of fleeing from it? And perhaps the most beautiful answer lies in something deceptively simple: love. Strip away the complexity of karma, the intricate maps of the bardos, the terrifying visions and dazzling lights, and the essence remains. How much did you love? Not in a sentimental sense, but in the deep, liberating sense of compassion, of openness, of connection to others as reflections of yourself. The sages remind us that love is the force that loosens attachment, that dissolves fear, that allows us to let go when everything else is slipping away. Death, then, is not only a mirror, it is a teacher. It asks us, did you live in fear or in love? Did you cling or did you release? Did you recognize the clear light within yourself and others, or did you turn away? These are the questions that matter when the body dissolves. The Bardo Thodol is not meant to be read once and set aside. It is a companion, a reminder to live deliberately. To meditate on death is not to be morbid, but to wake up to life. When we remember that everything is impermanent, that even this body, these possessions, this identity will one day dissolve, we are less likely to waste time on trivialities. We begin to live with urgency, not in fear, but in clarity. Every moment becomes precious. Every choice becomes an act of preparation. And this is where the teachings of Padmasambhava meet us today, centuries later. Across cultures and continents, whether or not we believe in literal bardos, whether or not we accept the imagery of deities and visions, the essence remains universal. Life and death are continuous, and the state of our mind shapes both. If we live blindly, carried by fear and craving, then death will reflect that blindness. If we live with awareness, cultivating clarity, compassion, and detachment, then death becomes not an enemy, but a doorway into freedom. So let us not wait. Let us practice now, to sit quietly and breathe, to watch the mind without judgment, to let go of clinging thoughts. These are acts of courage. To forgive, to open the heart, to love without condition. These are preparations more powerful than any ritual. To live in awareness is to prepare for death. To prepare for death is to live fully. And perhaps this is the true compass offered by the Bardo Thodol. Not a book about dying, but a book about living. For if we can meet death with clarity, then we can meet life with the same clarity. If we can release fear at the final breath, then we can release fear in this very breath. If we can see the clear light in the bardos, then we can begin to glimpse it even now, shimmering quietly beneath the noise of our thoughts. So I ask you, as you hear these words, are you ready? Not ready to die, but ready to live as if death were always near, as if every moment were an opportunity to awaken? For that is the truth. Death is always near. And that truth is not a threat, it is a gift. It is the reminder that life is not infinite, that what we do now matters, that love is the only wealth we carry across the threshold. And when that threshold arrives, as it will for each of us, may we remember. May we remember the light, the essence of mind, the peace that has always been within us. May we recognize it and merge with it. And if we forget, may we at least live now in such a way that when we meet ourselves in the bardos, we are not afraid. For in the end, as the sages whisper, there is only one question that truly matters. How deeply did you love, and how clearly did you live? And so, traveler of the soul, the map is in your hands, the compass is within you. The journey has already begun.